So getting into the early English colonies lesson, we're going to talk about 3 main colonies and how they got started. I'm going to show you a map for each one, and we'll kind of talk about why they settled where they settled. So the first permanent English settlement was Jamestown. There were other attempts prior to Jamestown in 1607, prior to 1607, but this is the first one that was successful, that remained, and actually Jamestown is still a city today. The early settlers in Jamestown arrived in April of 1607, about April or May, and they arrived with around 110, 120 people. The numbers are different depending on what source you look at. And while they were eventually successful, Jamestown had a lot of trouble. One, the location they picked on the river was a hard place because most of the year the tidal wave or the tides from the ocean came in and made that water undrinkable. It also just didn't move very much, which means if you washed things or you went to the bathroom in the water, then it would stay. So the water was dirty and undrinkable. The land was very marshy, so not really good for growing crops in most of the area, and the winters were really harsh. So it's not that it's impossible to grow things on a marsh. It just requires some skill. And while that required skill, one, the people who were there didn't have that skill, and most of them were so focused on trying to find gold that they really didn't try to grow crops or build shelters. So they had lots of problems with disease, which just came from that Columbian exchange. We talked about new interaction with new diseases. They also had really harsh winters that they didn't build shelters for, or at least not adequate shelters. And they didn't have enough food, so they go through a period known as the starving time. And it's a pretty tough period of Jamestown's history. Now, this is a map of Jamestown. Jamestown is right here in the middle. It's technically on an island right here along the James River. And Jamestown and the James River are named after King James I in England. You can see these red crosses. Those are all English forts. And these green triangles are where the English put settlements or cities. Now, the other marks out here, these like orange domes, those are where the Powhatan tribe, where their villages were located, and the Powhatan tribe is the tribe of Pocahontas. Now, the Disney movie Pocahontas is not very accurate, but she was a real person. So, why do you think they settled here? So here I want you to answer the question. Definitely some things you should keep in mind are the water. And you also want to keep in mind access to ocean, which may seem like the same thing, but they are slightly different. All right, so your answer should go here. This next slide, we have here a ship list. This is the list of the number of people based on their occupation. So they took all of the people who were on 2 of the original trips to Jamestown, and they tallied up how many of them were for which occupation. Occupation meaning job. So if you look here, council, that's the government or the governors. Gentlemen, their job is looking pretty, going to parties. Really what their job is being rich. And so a lot of them came to Virginia, to Jamestown, to become more rich. We do have 12 laborers, 4 carpenters, some blacksmiths, sailors, lots of different things, 1 surgeon, a preacher, a drummer, so all of these things. Now, of these first 110 people here, by December, nearly 70 are going to be dead. So, my question to you is there anything on this ship list that might give us a clue as to why? So, some things you could possibly answer here, maybe not enough of certain jobs. Maybe you could talk about too many unskilled people. Whatever it is you're putting here, just answer it from just the list. So you don't want to focus on the map. Don't focus on anything else I've said. If you were just If all you knew about Jamestown was this list, why do you think so many of them died? And you just type your answer right here. Moving on, we're going to talk about the Pilgrims and Puritans. These are two groups that start two separate colonies in what will become known as Massachusetts, the one colony. So we have the Pilgrims and the Puritans. I probably should have put the Pilgrims first, but let me talk about the Pilgrims first. The Pilgrims were in England. They technically weren't originally called Pilgrims. They were called Separatists. And they, like everyone in England, were a part of the Church of England. But the Church of England required you to be a member. Everyone who was an English citizen had to be a part of the Church of England. And the Pilgrims didn't like the idea that they were going to church with non-believers or sinners in their mind. So they wanted to form their own church, but that was illegal in England. And so to escape what they thought was religious persecution or, discrimination based on their religion, they went to Holland. And in Holland, they got permission from the Virginia Company to make their way to the New World. When they get there, we'll talk a little bit more about that, how they get there and when they get there on the next slide. Now, the Puritans are also a group that are part of the Church of England. Again, everyone had to be. But instead of wanting to make their own church, they just wanted to improve or reform the Church of England. And really, if you think of the word Puritan, kind of sounds like the word pure. They wanted to make the Church of England more pure. Kind of had a bad rap in the beginning because the Church of England was founded by Henry VIII. And really one of the main reasons he did that, not the only reason, but the main reason was that he was looking to divorce his first wife. And so they were really working to kind of improve the Church of England and really bring it back to a pure Christian base in their mind. They did believe that everyone should go to church, sinner, non-sinner, everyone should go to church. But because of their beliefs, because of the pureness that they were looking for in the Church of England, they also faced a lot of religious persecution. And so large numbers of them, after the Pilgrims left England and made their colony, they go to Massachusetts and form the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And there they create a government, kind of set up like a theocracy or a government that's run by the church or by the religious figures. And there's very strict rules on religion when they get there. But I'll talk about that in a second. So like I said, the Pilgrims were the first ones of those two groups. They come in 1620 to America. They were supposed to be going to Jamestown to Virginia because, again, I said they got permission from the Virginia Company to bring a ship and make their own kind of village or city there. They landed a little further north than they intended and decided that instead of going to Virginia and have to follow their rules, they might as well make their own place and make their own rules. So this group of separatists come to America, land at Plymouth, Massachusetts. Again, another city that's still there today. And because of that traveling for religious reason, that's why they're called the Pilgrims. That's the definition of pilgrim, a person who travels for a religious reason. When they get there, it's not just pilgrims that are with their group. They actually have other non-believers in their group, and they call them the strangers, which I think is a funny name. But one thing that they do is they create what's called the Mayflower Compact. Mayflower naming it after the ship that they took to make it to the Americas. And there they promise that all male citizens are going to be allowed to make decisions about the community together. So they kind of set up a democracy there. So something that they do there. Even the religious and the strangers would all be included in that. Now, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, like I said, happens after the Pilgrims. They land in what is going to eventually be known as Massachusetts. It's a much larger group, about 900 people. They're looking to create, again, Puritan, looking for a pure Christian society, trying to make the perfect society. They nicknamed this idea the city on a hill. And if you think of a lot of times when we think of something being pushed up, that's usually seen as a positive, right? So being on a hill, being pure, better, all of that. Because of the religious persecution they were facing in England because of their religious beliefs, between 1629 and 1640, we're going to see tens of thousands of them come to Massachusetts Bay Colony, coming to Boston, and it will eventually become one of the largest cities in the colonies at the time. Fun fact, this group, I kind of already mentioned it. I think I mentioned it. I don't remember now. They're the ones that are kind of behind the Salem witch trials. Again, super strict, super religious, very focused on a pure Christian society. And so when the accusation comes of witchcraft, they do have these trials. They basically torture these women, and eventually they agree to whatever it is they want them to confess. And 19 women are executed for, I think it might not be just women, but 19 people were executed for witchcraft before it ended. So kind of a crazy situation there. But okay, let me show you the map of where they land. So Boston, like I said, is the main city that they create here in this Massachusetts Bay Colony. And there's our little Salem Witch Trials, right? And it's on Massachusetts Bay. It's going to become a major port. Plymouth Colony here, Plymouth being where the Pilgrims landed. They're right on Cape Cod Bay. Lots of bays in this area, as you can see. So why do you think they choose this area to settle? So I would focus on why would the bays be important. Talk about access to water. And different things like that, because those are all things that are going to be important. Bays are this like natural place for boats to stop. So you, if you're going to be a part of trading or a part of, honestly, anything. If you want to trade, you need to be somewhere where you can have easy access to water and a place for boats to stop when they have something to trade with you.